Welcome back, guys. Today is September 30th. It is Monday. There is one more game left tonight, the Saints versus the Dolphins. But if you went with the lineup that I put out this weekend, you will not even need to worry about it. I do have a cheat sheet because there's a lot of information I want to get over. It'll be review on what happened and how many points total were scored. So let's get right down to it. I hope you guys use the lineup I did because I sure triple up on my money. So Peyton Manning did what Peyton Manning does. He went beastly against the Eagles. Hope you took my advice and started him. He did have that $9,900 price tag, but it was well worth it. Manning completed 28 of 34 passes for 327 yards and another 4 touchdown passes. He had 19 passing first downs, and Denver had 5 rushing first downs. The other 5 first downs came on penalties. He had 29.8 fantasy points for that price tag that I gave you. Running back Matt Forte had 14 carries for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. The touchdown came on Forte's longest run of the game, which was 53 yards, where he proceeded to go untouched all the way to the end zone. To go along with his rushing, Forte was targeted 6 times and nabbed 5 of those for 22 yards of receiving in the Bears' 40-32 loss. Forte ended up with 20.2 fantasy points on FanDuel. Running back Bilal Powell. Powell had 14 carries for 66 yards, which was his longest was 12. On top of the Powell was targeted 5 times, in which he caught 3 of the balls for 42 yards, and his longest catch was 36 yards. With his price tag being only $4,700 for a running back and him getting 12.3 fantasy points on FanDuel, he was definitely the value pick of the day. Wide receiver Julio Jones came in with a price tag of $8,400. He had 6 receptions on 13 targets for 108 yards, and he had 13.8 fantasy points. I can honestly say that Jones was not exactly what I had hoped for, but it was not his fault about the passes that he dropped. He did miss 7 of those targets, but because most of them were Matt Ryan being incapable of hitting him, and the ones that I saw were over his head and uncatchable. On the first play that he came back after getting hurt with a minute 50 left in the game, after Atlanta completed an onside kick that went off Zach Sudfeld, Julio completed a 49-yard catch that put them at the New England's 13-yard line, but the Falcons were unable to punch it through and complete the comeback, with a pass intended for Roddy White getting deflected, and they had to turn the ball over with 35 seconds to go. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson of the Eagles was only targeted 6 times, in which he had only 2 receptions for 34 yards. This was an all-around ugly game against the Broncos, and Jackson only had 4.4 fantasy points. He was well below production I expected at his price tag of $7,300. Look for him to definitely bounce back against his next matchup. Wide receiver Ryan Broyles. Well, I will have to admit that this was a sleeper pick of the week, and I went along, and I did see a lot of people go with this pick, and he was a $4,700 price tag, but he was only targeted 1 time, and he did not catch the ball. He did end up with 0 fantasy points. The one target that he did have was a Matt Stafford pass well behind him that he had absolutely no chance in hell to catch this ball. So I do apologize. This is the one screw-up that he did of the week, but I saw a lot of people do it. He should have been targeted a lot more than 1 time. But if you guys did go with the rest of the lineup that I have, you should have prospered, and you should be in the money regardless of getting 0 points from one person. I did go with tight end Coby Fleener of the Indianapolis Colts. He had 5 receptions on 7 targets for a total of 77 yards receiving on yesterday. His longest came on a 31-yard touchdown catch in the 3rd quarter, which put the Colts up 27-3 on their way to a 37-3 demolishing of the winless Jaguars. Fleener came into Sunday with a $5,500 price tag and put up 16.2 fantasy points, which definitely outperformed the predictions and his price tag. On that same line, along with the Jaguars, there were fans that ended up having a plane fly over the stadium just demanding that Tebow be signed. Now, I don't think that could hurt anything. I'm not a huge Tebow fan, but what do they have to lose? They're only going to generate revenue by jerseys, It will be a media circus, but it is already a media circus when they're winless. And there are winless teams like the Giants, but the Jaguars are just awful. They have not scored that many points. The Broncos, in fact, actually scored more points in the second half of Sunday's game than the Jaguars have scored all year. So honestly, sign Tebow. What's it going to hurt? It won't hurt a thing, and it can only be good. But on with that. Matt Prater, the kicker for the Broncos. Along with a great QB, I knew Prater would have a great game. Prater made a 53-yard field goal to go along with 7 extra points. He scored 12 fantasy points on FanDuel to go with his $5,400 price tag. Now, that is a little more than I usually like to spend on kickers. I usually like to spend $5,000 on a kicker and $5,000 on defense. But I had a feeling that Peyton Manning would go off and Prater would get his time, especially in Denver. So I hope you went with him. Great choice. Lastly, defense, Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs. They are 4-0. The Chiefs' price came a little higher than minimum at $5,300, but it was a well worth bet. They had 3 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 1 interception, and 1 punt return that came on Dexter McCluster's 89-yard return in the third quarter that made the score 17-7. And the Chiefs only allowed 7 points in a whopping 19 fantasy points for a defense. That was the most defensive fantasy points of this week. So, hope you guys had as much luck as I did. I ended up tripling my money regardless of the outcome of tonight. So, again, check out FanDuel. Remember to comment, like, subscribe, do this channel a solid, show people up. Tell them, show them, send them a link, do whatever you want. Also, I have the paper version of all of these predictions and everything over at my sports blog, which is fantasysportsadvice.sportsblog.com. So be sure to go check that out. Follow that. Help me build up there so I can build up here. Again, that is fantasysportsadvice.blogspot.com. Until next week, hope you had just as much luck. Have a good one.